It's all I can do. All I can do is shake my head. Hello, everybody. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use the promo code PHLY365. Sign up, deposit just $10, bet your first five, and get up to $150 back in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. And you can bet, of course, on player props, spreads, totals, parlays, so much more. And that's why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Hello to everybody in the chat. Early on, I see Molly and Barkley's Life, Filthy McNasty. Hello to everybody who may be coming along with us later, whether you're joining us after the Flyers podcast wraps up or you're listening later in the day, or you've caught us on the audio-only platforms, our podcast platforms. Hello to you, and thank you so much for checking us out. If you would not mind, before we go any further, smash that like button. And, of course, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. We just broke the 45,000 subscriber mark last week, and we are looking to get to 50,000 by the end of the summer. So there you go. Bryce Harper tells you to do it. You got to do it. But hello to everybody. Tyler Zulli with you. Andrew Frazier producing today's show. We'll talk to Bob Cooney at 1:30. We'll do our Ace Hardware temperature check, and we'll get into all of it in the next hour of the PHLY Phillies podcast, because all I can do is shake my head. You know me. I think at this point, if you've listened to the PHLY Phillies podcast, or if you've listened to Philly with John Marks, or the PHLY Penn State show, or when I hang out with Anthony, when I fill in for Andrew, whomever I'm with, I like to believe I am somebody who, especially when it comes to baseball, is measured, calculated, not overly dramatic, not overly aggressive, or get too high or get too low on a team. I like to talk about a series or a streak or a month's worth of time with relativity, because I think in baseball specifically, you will go through ebbs and flows throughout a season. And if you were to tell me that the Phillies at one point would win nine series out of 10 and then lose 9 games out of 10, I would tell you, if you just looked at the bulk of the schedule, that's still a winning mark. Because if you take 2 of 3 for 9 out of 10 series, that gets you to an 18-9 record. If you lose 9 out of 10, that gets you to a 19-19 record. It's not ideal, but you're alive. It's 500 through a month and some change sample size. With that being said, all of that to be said, I'm pissed off today. And I'm not pissed off because the Phillies lost a series, or even at the fact that they got swept in a series. Those things happen throughout the year. The Phillies are going to sweep teams. They're going to get swept. They're going to win series. They're going to lose series. They're going to split series. No doubt, Tyler, that's baseball, right? But that's the gamut and the pendulum swing that is baseball. You're going to win 9 series out of 10, and then you're going to drop 9 out of 10 games. Why I'm pissed off today, why I feel like way more agitated than I've been for a majority of the season, with the exception of the Mets series, where they got and it's not just because they got swept, but the exception of the Mets series, this is the most angry series I have, coming out of a series I have been with the Phillies this year, because of the, word of the day that we used in that Mets series, and it rears its ugly head once again, and it is the worst place to be over the course of a series for a baseball team, is lifeless. So the Phillies get swept by the Pirates, and it happens over the course of a season. Do you want to get swept by a team that's 16 games under 500? Of course you don't. But sometimes those things happen. You go in feeling like you're the better team, and you come out with your tail between your legs, and you get beat up over the course of a series. You're like the dog who gets yelled at, knows it did something wrong. I do it it happens with my dog all the time. Goes outside, does something wrong, gotta yell at her, and then she comes out to you like an hour later, sad and wanting to apologize. Sometimes that happens, right? As a sports team, you just get embarrassed and kind of get humbled a little bit. You eat a little bit of that humble pie. Why I'm pissed off about this weekend series is the fact that this was a very, very, one more time, very winnable series for the Phillies. Not because they were playing the Pirates. Well, in part because they were playing the Pirates, but because of how this series unfolded. Because of the fact that they lost in walk-off fashion on Friday night, a game in which they knew they were going to have to go with a bullpen game, and your bullpen, for the most part, with the exception of Alan Rangel giving up the 3 runs in 3 innings, kept you afloat. A night after Jesus Luzardo was bad again, and you had to rely on your bullpen to get you, what did he get? 7 outs, I think it was, against Toronto. So to get you 20 outs the day prior, knowing you were going into a bullpen game, and for the most part, your bullpen kept you afloat, and you lose the game 5-4 on walk-off fashion. We'll talk about Jordan Romano in a little bit because it's not necessarily the runs that I have an issue with. It's something else that he's been doing for the entirety of the year that makes me want to slam my head against a brick wall. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Saturday and Sunday are really where I get perturbed. It's really where I raise my voice. It's really where I shake my head. It's really where I smack, face palm, right? Any other of these other cliches you can think of. Saturday and Sunday are my problem because you gave up a combined 4 runs and lost not just the game or the games, but got swept in the series. You had excellent starting pitching on both Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, and you came away with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I get it. Sunday, you had to go up against Paul Skeens. He might be the best freaking pitcher in baseball. So understanding it was going to be an uphill offensive battle on Sunday afternoon, I totally get that. I'm not sitting here and saying, well, you should have beat up on Paul Skeens when it was just 1-1. No, I'm not. I understand it's Paul Skeens. But in general, to come away with 4 runs over those 2 games, especially when how good your starting pitching was, that's where it becomes unacceptable. A 2-1 loss with 4 hits on Saturday afternoon, a 2-1 loss with 3 hits on Sunday afternoon. And the entirety of the series, this is where my problem comes in. This is why I'm perturbed today. This is why I feel like I'm a little more animated than I usually am. If you would have averaged 3 runs across the series, you would have won the series. You wouldn't have swept. You would have still lost on Friday night. But if you would have averaged 3 runs, if you would have scratched out 9 runs over the course of 3 games against a team that's 16 games under 500 coming into the season, you would have won 2 out of 3. And we would not be having this conversation. Maybe you lose on Friday, or maybe you lose to Skeens on Sunday 2-1, but you win Friday, Saturday. Whatever the case may be, we would not be having this conversation. I would not be coming out here and feeling like I have to yell into the microphone and yell into the camera because of how this weekend transpired. The Pirates scored 9 runs, and you got swept out by them. They scored 9 runs the entire series, and you didn't win a single game. And as I said, pitching in games 2 and 3 specifically were so good. Let's start with Saturday. Ranger Suarez, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, just 5 hits allowed. Ranger has been so damn good since he's come back from the IL, especially after that first start against the Diamondbacks. His season ERA, even in that start against Arizona where he gave up 7 runs, is down to 2.70. So let's go back through Saturday. He gives up the triple to Nick Gonzalez to begin the bottom of the first, and a home run to Henry Davis in the 7th inning. Those are the only 2 runners that the Pirates played it all day. And it becomes exceptionally difficult to hold a runner off of third after a leadoff triple to begin the game, or to begin the bottom half of the first. Your first at bat in the game. So Gonzalez scores. Oh, well, it's 1-1 after the home run by Schwarber in the first. And you give up a home run in the 7th. Besides that, Ranger Suarez was excellent on Saturday afternoon. He limited hard contact. He only gave up 4 other batted balls aside from the triple and the home run that were hit at 96 miles an hour or more. But the thing with him is, as always seems to be the case with Ranger, he was excellent when they needed him to be, and he limited hard contact throughout the entirety of the game. The average exit velocity off the bats of the Pirates in Saturday afternoon was 84.4 miles an hour. That means that Ranger was excellent again on the mound, and he got nothing to show for it. At one point, he retired 10 straight hitters and 16 of 17 between the 2nd inning and Henry Davis's home run. Between the 3rd inning and Henry Davis's home run in the 7th. 16 of 17 straight hitters, 10 in a row. Average exit velocity under 85 miles an hour. Got 10 whiffs and 21 called strikes on his 97 pitches. If I said that was and I gave you the line score of 7 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 Ks, just 5 hits allowed, that should be a win 90% of the time. But not only is it not a win, it's a loss because he's not even able to qualify for a no decision because your offense was that lifeless. In the game, they get 4 hits. And in the final 3 innings against the Pirates bullpen, after Andrew Heaney gives up the leadoff double to Alec Boehm in the 7th inning, who, by the way, with an opportunity to take a lead at 1-1, he doubles to begin the game. You get nothing out of it. They don't score at all. The Phillies don't get a base runner for the final 3 innings against the Pirates bullpen. And immediately, because you can't score that run, Henry Davis's home run is the game winner. And the Pirates win 2-1. The Phillies in the last 3 innings had 3 strikeouts, 4 flyouts, and 2 groundouts. And only one of those 6 balls put in play, a Trea Turner groundout that was a pretty routine play, was hit hard. So the Phillies lose that type of game 2-1. And that should have been a wake-up call for this offense, because now you have to go face Skeens. I got a text from a buddy in a group chat, and he was spot on. To lose a series before you have to face Skeens, you're cooked. Less than ideal, right? If you split games 1 and 2, even going up against Skeens in 3, you have an opportunity to win the series. You didn't do that because you lost the first 2 games. And then against Skeens, again, who, I get it, he obliterates most teams at this point. The guy is off the charts good. We'll talk a little bit more about him in just a second. For the second consecutive Sunday, the second time this year, when the Phillies faced Paul Skeens on a Sunday, their starting pitcher was equally as good. If you remember, Mick Abel outdueled Paul Skeens. Skeens was unbelievable, had a complete game, went 8 innings. Phillies won 1-0. And then on Sunday, Skeens was good again, and Christopher Sanchez matched him 0 for 0 for a majority of the game. On Sunday, Sanchez goes 7 innings, gives up 2 earned runs, strikes out 9, gives up 6 hits. His season ERA is now down to 3.1. So you have Ranger Suarez at 2.7, Zach Wheeler's at 2.96, and Christopher Sanchez is now at 3.1, and Mick Abel, through his first 2 starts, has given up 1 run over 11 innings. He'll pitch tomorrow. To have all of that with your pitching staff and to falter offensively the way that they have over the last 10 days is really, really concerning. So Christopher Sanchez gives up 1 run through the first 7 innings. Rob Thompson sends him back out there for the 8th inning. And you can question whether Rob Thompson should have sent Christopher Sanchez back out or not. I get why he did it. And why he did it was because the bullpen's been taxed all week. They had a bullpen game on Friday. They were desperately trying to get another 3 outs from Christopher Sanchez. But Sanchez at that point had thrown 96 pitches. And so I get why you're trying to do it, but this feels like one of those situations where you should probably just leave it on the high note. He would have given you 7 strong innings. It still gave you 7 strong innings, but he would have given you 7 innings of 1-run ball, and it would have been 1-1 heading into a clean inning for Orion Kerkering. Does Orion Kerkering get through the inning unscathed? I don't know. But Sanchez walks O'Neal Cruz on 4 pitches, and that again ends up being the game winner. Sanchez was dominant on Sunday, and he gets nothing to show for it. Sanchez led all pitchers across the entirety of Major League Baseball on a day where every single team played. Sanchez led every pitcher with 21 generated whiffs, more than Paul Skeens' 16, more than every other pitcher across Major League Baseball. And the Phillies and he get nothing to show for it because, once again, the offense was lifeless. Paul Skeens attacked them and went right after them yesterday. He threw 52 fastballs and sinkers of his 97 pitches. Now, that's not unsurprising. That is something that Skeens does well. But for a guy who throws 5 and 6 pitches on any given night, to have thrown 52 pitches that were just the hard stuff, he knew he could go right after them. He ended up giving up just 5 batted balls of what we consider on this show hard contact at 95 miles an hour or more. The Phillies were 1 for 5 on those 5 swings. The inverse was that they put 8 balls in play at 86 miles an hour or less. He didn't give up a lot of hard contact either. And on top of it, he had 5 1-2-3 innings and an inning that was considered 1-2-3 because he gave up a base runner. But then the Phillies ended up getting into a strike him out, throw him out double play to end the inning. So Skeens dominated the Phillies from start to finish. And I don't know how many times I can say it. I understand that you're talking about one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball in Paul Skeens. I totally understand it. But it's not just because you face Skeens. You now have lost 2 consecutive games, 2-1. It's also the 3rd time in 5 games you've lost 2-1. It's the 4th time in 5 games that you've scored 1 run, and it is the 6th time in 10 games that you've scored 2 or less. So you could sit here and say, Rob Thompson made a poor decision in leaving Chris Sanchez in, or this decision, that decision, blah, blah, blah. The offense as a collective whole has been brutal in the last 10 games. So they score 8 runs against the Blue Jays, against Bowden Francis. They jump on him for 6 in the first inning. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. They score 8 runs against him in that game. The other 9 games, and that includes the day that they scored 7, but it was really like 5 garbage time runs. They've not been very good. In fact, they've been dreadfully bad. And so for me to come on here today as somebody who generally doesn't take a single series or even a multitude of series that deep past what happened and how do you learn from it, or what happened and how do you build on it. This series, to me, because of the way that it happened, is probably the second worst series of the season so far, only behind that Mets series. And it might be first because of the fact of who you played. When you get swept by the Mets, you see a team leading the NL East, a team that has really exceeded expectations in terms of their starting rotation and has met expectations in terms of their lineup. I can justify it a little bit. I can't justify a sweep at the hands of a 26-40 team that averages the least amount of runs per game in baseball, the least amount of extra base hits, the second fewest home runs, and I think they have the second worst batting average in all of baseball. This Pirates offense sucks. It's terrible. And if you would have averaged 3 runs per game, you would have won the series. Maybe not sweep, but you would have won the series. And so for me to come on here and to kind of scream and yell, because it's not my MO, it's not how I do this job, especially in covering the Phillies. I didn't do it covering the Eagles. I've done it maybe a handful of times in my career. But for me to come on here and scream and yell the way that I have for the first 18 minutes is because of the fact that this team was lifeless this weekend. And it all has to do with their offense. We'll talk more about their offense in the Ace Hardware Temp Check segment coming up in just a little bit. Bob Cooney coming up at 1:30. I don't know, maybe he'll be more measured. Bob is a pretty calculated guy himself. He's a smart guy, and maybe he can shake me out of this a little bit, because it's not usually me who does the screaming around PHLY or around the sports media landscape. So we'll talk to him at 1:30, and then we're going to talk about some fun stuff, because I don't want to scream and yell for an hour straight, just because I don't want to do it. We'll do that in just a little bit, but first, why don't we pause for just a moment, and we'll tell you about some of our friends here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. All right, let's start with Ace Hardware Home Services. We're going to hear about them in just a little bit as we get to the Ace Hardware Temp Check, but you know about Ace, you know the jingle, and you know that Ace is the place with the helpful hardware folks, but did you also know they are the place with the helpful hardware home service team? Thinking about getting an outlet you need fixed, it could be something as simple as that, or maybe it's something more complex: plumbing, electrical, heating, cooling. I know that it's been kind of weird weather recently, but summer is here and you're going to get those days in the 90s. If you want to get your AC fixed before it's too late, you've got the trusted pros that'll keep your home humming all year long. Or maybe you've got a heating issue and you got through last winter and you don't want to suffer again this winter. Get to it now while it's still warm, before it gets to the winter months in just a couple of months and your heating is shot again. They bring the helpful hardware folks to your helpful hardware home service team. And again, they're the ones that you're going to be able to get from Philly all the way to the Jersey Shore to fix something small or substantial in your house. So head on over to acehardwarehomeservices.com. And it's Ace Hardware Home Services. Once again, acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. All right, and while we're here, let's tell you about our friends over at GLAT Hair Restoration. Because if your hairline's been slipping and you're thinking about doing something about it, it is time to listen up. Hair transplants, they're not just cosmetic, they're real surgery. And if you're thinking about having to fly overseas to save a buck, think again, because you can get incredible expert board certified work with board certified surgeons with over 30 years of experience with our friends over at GLAT Hair by Morgenstern Medical, and they're located right in Bala Cynwyd. I made the ride to Bala Cynwyd for over 6 years for work, and you can get there in as little as a half an hour, depending on where you're coming from. It's local, it's right here, and you don't have to worry about going overseas to get that job done. Our friends over at GLAT follow strict U.S. safety standards and deliver results that actually matter. And the best part is, if you're thinking about, hey, my hairline's slipping a little bit, what do I need to do? Snap a photo of your hairline, send it over in a text, or you can call them at 610-980-4000, and they're going to take a look at your photo, talk to you, and get you the right treatment plan for you. It's a one-on-one consultation from start to finish. They're not going to treat you like a number. They're going to treat you like you. And it may not mean hair restoration surgery right away, but there may be some steps to get to that point. And GLAT is going to be with you every step of the way. So skip the travel, skip the risk, and get real care from a trusted home local team. Again, call 610-980-4000 or visit glathairmm.com to get in touch with the GLAT Hair team. That's GLAT Hair by Morgenstern Medical. Let's get your hairline back in the game. All right, welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365, where it's never ordinary at Bet365. We're going to talk to Bob Cooney in just a moment. Hello to everybody in the chat. K-Red, Catholic Nono, Molly and Barkley's Life, Peel and Onions, Filthy McNasty. Hello to you all, and of course, a hello to Andrew Frazier for producing the show today. Thank you. I am not quite in the Sixers territory just yet. I'll be back. I'll be okay. But it was a frustrating series, and I think a lot of people, understandably so, are frustrated because we should have been able to talk about take 2 of 3. Otto Kemp makes his major league debut. He wasn't particularly strong, but it was cool to see him make his major league debut. We should have been able to talk about these things. Hey, the Phillies survived the first series without Bryce Harper, who hits the IL with a wrist issue, but we couldn't get that. We couldn't get to that point. And so I'm going to calm down for a second. Well, maybe not, because this next segment's not going to be fun either. So sorry about that. We'll move on. We'll talk to Bob at 1:30. But it is time now for our Ace Hardware Temp Check, which is brought to you by our friends, as I said, brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services. You can check them out at acehardwarehomeservices.com, where we check in on a player who is heating up or cooling down. And it would be simple to say, everybody is cooling down right now. The Phillies right now offensively have struggled as a collective unit. Now, this weekend feels like it was one of those situations where I'm walking into a trap when I pick a player or a couple of players, because I'm going to say, hey, player X played poorly. And then on social media, you get a retort of, well, what about player Y? Why aren't you talking about player Z? The reality of the situation is this team right now offensively has been dreadful for the last 10 games. And so who's faltering for the Ace Hardware Temp Check? Yes, all of them. The entirety of the roster right now. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and blame Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber had a little bit of a dip this week, but he's been excellent for a majority of the season. Trea Turner, for the most part, has been very good offensively, still hitting 300. And I know people are like, well, he's become a singles merchant. Well, but he's getting on base and he's scoring runs, and for the most part, Trea Turner's been very good offensively. I'm going to highlight 2 players. And I understand this invites well, why don't you pick the center fielder or the center fielders? Why don't you pick the catcher? Because I'm going to get to that in just a second. The 2 players that I'm going to highlight are Max Kepler and Bryson Stott. And this is not the first time that either of these 2 guys have been featured on the Ace Hardware Temperature Check. And it's not the first time that either of these 2 guys have been featured on the Ace Hardware Temperature Check for the wrong reasons. But let's start with Max Kepler. Since the calendar flipped to June, Kepler has 1 hit in his last 17 at-bats, and it's not an extra base hit. He has 1 hit. It's a single. Since the start of May, Max Kepler is 16 for 97 with a .212 on-base percentage. And then we can turn to Bryson Stott. Stott, who I am a fan of, has really, really struggled offensively since a really strong month of the late month of April into the early portions of May. But since the calendar flipped to June, Stott has just 2 hits. He's 2 for 24. He also has 0 extra base hits this month. And since the start of May, he has 23 hits in 121 at-bats for a 240 on-base percentage. So your two of your lefties in the lineup are really, really struggling. And again, this invites the conversation of, well, why did you not pinpoint this player or that player or this player or that player? But the reality of the situation is those 2 guys deserve to be pinpointed because they've not been very good over the last month plus. And it's become frustrating because they have gotten to a point where both of them are unable to hit against left-handed pitching. So you're talking about a platoon player at second base right now, a platoon player in left field, a platoon player in center field. A third of your lineup is platooning. It's really, really hard to win that way. And I gave this team a lot of credit when it was deserved because they were winning the games they were supposed to win. They were beating up on the bad teams and winning the series and stacking series with some good teams sprinkled in. Beat Cleveland, beat who was it earlier in the month that they had beaten that was a good team. I know that, like the Dodgers way early in the year notwithstanding, right? But like they did what they were supposed to do against the Rays and the Rockies and the Athletics, right? I am never going to complain about winning games that you're supposed to win. But right now, what I'm seeing is a lineup that right now is kind of ebbing and flowing together, and there's a lot of ebb right now, which is not particularly strong. So for that point, the Phillies as a whole collective unit, as I mentioned, scored 8 runs in the game against Toronto. In their last 10 games, they have scored 30 runs total. That's 3 runs per game on average, and that includes an 8-run win and a 7-run game that they lost by 10 runs because they lost 17-7. And it almost feels like that a lot of those runs were garbage time runs at the end because it was at one point, I believe it was 17-2 or 15-2 or whatever it was. I know they scored 5 late and ended up scoring 7 runs in that game. If you take away those 2 games, one that doesn't end up accumulating to anything, and the other one, which was a fun game, no doubt, where they jumped on Bowden Francis for 6 runs in the first inning. If you take those 2 games away, that's 15 runs in the other 8 games. That is an average of less than 2 runs per game over an 8-game sample size. It's no wonder they're 1-9 in their last 10 games. They're not scoring runs. So now you're looking at 3 positions, as I brought up, but probably more, where you have an everyday player or a close to everyday player or even a platoon piece. You have 5 guys, and I'm not even going to tell you who they are because I want you to be able to look at this from a way that's not saying, well, I dislike Brandon Marsh or I dislike Bryson Stott. And so, yeah, of course they're in that list. But I'm going to give you 5 numbers, and I'm not even going to tell you who they are. 5 players who are in that capacity are hitting 245, 239, 223, 216, and 208. And the reason that I don't tell you who they are, it's a matter of the fact that it's 5 players across 4 positions who are hitting 245 or worse. These 5 guys collectively have 57 extra base hits. That is an average of 11.4 extra base hits per player. If you take those 57 extra base hits and figure out that those 5 players have a combined 825 or 828 at bats, that's an extra base hit every 14 and a half games. That's effectively a game's worth of at bats for 5 players over the course of a day. So you're talking about 5 different positions or 5 different players across 4 different positions on average, averaging 1 extra base hit per game, approximately. You're telling me that 4 different spots in your lineup are compiling 1 extra base hit per day. Now, if I gave you one of those averages, like let's say it was 245 or 239, and one of those guys happened to be Kyle Schwarber, I think you're 100% fine with it. Because you think about the 20 home runs, the insane amount of extra base hits, the RBIs that he has, I think you live with 239 or 245 with all of that being said. We've done it before. We're happy with what Schwarber is. That's not the case. He's hitting 252. And his average has actually gone down over the last couple of days because he had an O for a couple nights and things like that. Kyle Schwarber's not on that list. You would expect him to be because, for years he's been a 220, 230 type of hitter with insane amount of pop. He's not on that list. And now I'll give you the names of those 5 guys because I think we were able to look at it from an objective standpoint. Those 5 guys include Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, Johan Rojas, Max Kepler, and JT Realmuto. Your everyday catcher, your near everyday second baseman, your near everyday left fielder, and your 2 platoon center fielders. All of which are hitting 245 or worse. You can't win that way. And they're not winning that way right now. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is going to exist forever because I don't think it does. But those numbers don't lie to you right now. And again, that's where it invites the conversation of, well, you brought up these guys, but why didn't you bring up this guy? Everybody on the lineup right now, for the most part, is pretty much struggling. And it's why they're 1-9 in their last 10. All right, we're going to pause for just a moment. That's our Ace Hardware temperature check brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services. On the other side, we'll be joined by all PHLY and PHLY.com's Bob Cooney, who's going to check in with a weekend recap. I'm sure he had about as much fun as the rest of us did, which was 0. But we'll kind of try to parse this thing out a little bit and see if Bob can give me any kind of positive spin on this series. We'll do that in just a second. But before we do that, let's pause for just a moment and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. All right, let's start with our friends and our presenting sponsor over at Bet365, and you'll find out why 90 million users know why it's never ordinary when you bet with Bet365. They offer incredible early payouts across the NBA and the NHL with the championships in full swing. If you have a team in the NHL that goes up by 3 goals, whether you're thinking about Florida or Edmonton, you get an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. Same thing with the NBA, whether you're thinking about Indiana or OKC. If either of those teams that you pick to win go up by 20 points in a day, you get the Bet365 early payout offer as well. And new customers, this is continuing news. It's not breaking news anymore, but it's still an incredible offer that I can't recommend enough. You get $150 back in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. So sign up, use the promo code PHLY365, deposit just $10 and place your bet for $5 to get $150 back in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. Those bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. And that's why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, as a small business owner, you just don't have the luxury of clocking out because your business is on your mind 24/7. And when you're hiring, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that's where the hiring partners at LinkedIn Jobs come into play. They make it easy for you to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates that you can manage all in one place. They offer you an incredible feature that helps you write your job descriptions for you and then quickly get that job out in front of the right people and the right candidates to find the person that is best for you. You can either put your job up for free, which is great, or you can pay to promote it, and promoted jobs get 3 times more qualified applicants. You'll find out why 72% of small businesses use LinkedIn, and they say it helps them find a high quality candidate and find that candidate quickly. And you'll find out why 2.5 million small businesses in total use LinkedIn for hiring today. Head on over to linkedin.com/Phillies and post your job for free. Once again, that's linkedin.com/Phillies to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. And it is time to welcome in our buddy to the show. You can read all of his work on allphly.com. You check him out on all of the other PHLY shows, whether it's the PHLY Phillies or it's Philly with John Marks. It's the morning show with Anthony Gargano. It's our friend, Bob Cooney. Bob, what's up, my friend?
Tyler, how are you, buddy?
I'm tired of screaming. I'm not gonna lie.
I have to hold you up there. Okay, you could be my son. I'm old enough to be your father. I have kids around your age. I've been around the business a long time, and you are great at what you do. I want to give you a little bit of a lesson here, Tyler. You really need to learn what yelling and screaming is. If you are considering yourself today as a yeller and a screamer, man, I'm telling you, the Anthony Garganos of the world and all the other sports media people that we know, they just shake their head in disbelief, Ty.
Got a long way to go.
No, but I can hear your frustration and you know, the numbers that you've laid out so well for the first half hour of the show. It tells the story. And, anytime you're talking about baseball, it comes back to it's 162 games and it's a long season and this and that. And yeah, the concerning thing about this Phillies team is, and I wrote it, I think 3 weeks ago when they were about to go on a road trip. And I said, what is their offensive identity? Because they were put together as kind of a bopping team, right? Like you were thinking with a Schwarber and a Harper, and maybe Castellanos gets you to the 25 and 30s, and maybe Real Muto. And they had the 1 year where didn't they have 6 guys over 20 home runs, right? Yeah. So you're thinking, okay, is it a bopping team? Then you look at it this year and you say, well, Bohm's not really a bopper. We have to realize that he's not. If you can get him to be the double hitter he was last year and drive in runs, okay, good. Harper is dealing with injuries. He's not the bopper now, and until he gets healthy, he's not going to be. Castellanos, I don't know. His power days, although his average is fine at like 285-ish, I think his power days are very limited. Doubles, yeah, great, and I like that, but I'm not looking for him. So you don't have power at the corner positions in the outfield, which you normally want to get it from. You certainly don't have it in the middle of the outfield. Now, if you don't have it from a first baseman or a third baseman, I don't know, Ty. What are you? So are you a single sitting team? Do you have that guy that can get on base constantly? Well, Trea Turner's trying. I mean, he's got like a 350 OBP, but I don't, who's driving him in. So it's maddening. And you brought up the numbers, like Luzardo's struggling, but the rest of the starting pitchers, okay, it's I called them sick last week. They're still really good. And you were missing Wheeler. I don't know. I told you I don't like the thought of trading an Abel for a bat. I don't like the thought of, getting rid of Suarez before his year's over or losing him to free agency. That's the bigger picture to me, Ty, besides losing 9 out of 10. Where do you go from here? Do you look to fix now and threaten the future? Do you have patience now and hope it comes around and still bargain for still have what you have for the future? I don't know. It's a conundrum after they were so good and now they've been so bad over the last 10 games.
It's interesting. You bring up the power versus the on-base thing, and it feels like it may be a never. This is the one thing I might defend the Phillies on a little bit. It feels like it's an unwinnable battle because when they were the slug team, we said chase rate's too high, K rate's too high. There's times where they just all go into these valleys together. The beginning of this season, chase rates were better. They stopped whiffing nearly as much. They weren't hitting a ton of home runs outside of Schwarber, but they were producing because they were manufacturing a lot of runs. And I think in part that was because Bryson Stott had a really good late April, and they put him in the top of the lineup, and it became a catalyst type of thing, and it allowed Kyle Schwarber to hit where he, where a lot of fans wanted him to hit. But right now, I almost feel like it's swung the other way, where I talked about Bryson Stott specifically the other day, where he's almost looking at too many pitches now. So, what's the middle ground for this team of, sure, you have to be conscious of patience and things like that because they only saw 5 pitches the other day in the first inning against Andrew Heaney, but
and
you also
scored
a run, right? So you scored a run and had 3 outs on 5 pitches. So what's the balance for you? What would your balance be between, I don't need you to be launch angle, swing for the fences, but I also need you to not let good pitches go by if you're seeing good pitches.
Yeah, and it goes back to just what I said, Ty. I don't know what their identity is. So you're saying what's the solution? What's the balance? The balance is be who you are. If if what you are is good enough to get you where you want to go, if you're the Phillies, is it? I don't know. I kind of like Schwarber getting moved to number 4, but is Bryson Stott a leadoff hitter? I don't know. We know how it's going around the league where you're throwing different people at leadoff. Should Bryce Harper be leading off? Should you go back to Schwarber leading off? All questions, all viable, sure, but does it matter when you're hitting the way they are? No matter where you put Stott in the order, does it matter if he's going to go into these? If he's a 250 hitter this year? No, probably not. Castellanos, I think he's fine where he is. But, he's been fluctuating between, all right, you got to put him at the 5 or 3 or somewhere because he is your 285 hitter. So now are you adjusting him around? Alec Bohm, I don't know. I don't know his identity. I don't know if he knows his identity. I can't put a grasp on like, okay, who it is, who is this team offensively? And I said it like last year, might have been longer. I might have said it on the radio, like in 1980. So you had the run of the late 70s. I may have told you this before, Ty. In the late 70s, the Phillies were winning close to 100 games and 100 games, had a really good team with Schmidt and Luzinski and Bo, those guys, but they just weren't getting over the top. And then they bring in a guy in Pete Rose, 38 years old, but a guy that constantly got on base, a guy that you knew exactly what you were going to get from, and a guy that would kick asses in the locker room. Like, hey, Schmidt, you're so good and you don't even realize it. Start realizing it. And he took them over the top. I think this team needs a guy like that, a guy that, okay, he's a rock solid, 320 hitter, 310 hitter, who's going to get on base all the time, who is going to play his ass off, who is somebody you can just count on every single day. And, I've often wondered, is that kind of something this team needs? Now, whether it's available or not, I don't know. But there's stuff missing, Ty, offensively, and I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts because you bring up, like, do you need that change of pace, locker room move type of thing? And obviously, productivity is important, but I think it does you need somebody who maybe be able to do a little bit of both. Does this kind of play back to the conversation you and I had a few weeks ago, where it was because of all the wild card teams now, because of the fact that there's 12 postseason teams each and every year, it becomes harder to find these guys because teams don't want to sell, and teams that do want to sell are looking for a king's ransom for those type of players because they know that they can.
Yeah, and there's your balance right there. Like, what are you willing to do? And I've always been big on. I don't really care about number 4, 5, 6 prospects. Like, how many times do you hear about all right, we can't trade him because he's a 4 prospect or number 3 prospect because they're the future. Like, look, I think that numbers better than anybody, as you proved in the first half hour of the show. How many times do prospects work out? I'm all for trading prospects for a known commodity. Sure. Now, I'm not getting rid of Painter and I'm not getting rid of Abel. I'm just not doing that. I love the makeup of this pitching staff, starting pitching staff, I should say, moving forward this year and for years to come, maybe. So that I wouldn't touch to go out to get a bat, but they have to do something. Dave Dombrowski has to do something. And does it have to be on the bigger side? Maybe. But I wouldn't do prospects. And if you're talking about, was there not interest in Alec Bowman in the offseason? That's what it appears. I don't know. It's that big picture I'm talking about, Ty. Do you go all in for the now? And then you have to look and say, well, is the now besides good enough? Because I don't know how long Bryce Harper is going to be out. You mentioned you have 3 players pretty much that are rotational players in the starting lineup. You have a bullpen that, give me a word, rocky, shaky. How would you put it? Like, how do you describe their bullpen?
An arm too short. I mean, I know it's more than a word, but an arm too short for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I like to look at, I'm not just looking at the 9 out of 10 or when they won 9 in a row or something like that. I always like to look at the big picture. And, okay, where is this big picture? Big picture now to me is, okay, Harper's out. Is this team good enough, even if they go out and get a bat? Where is this bullpen? And what is Dave Dombrowski going to do as far as maybe hurting the future to stay where they are, or maybe, auctioning off the future to try to get the wins here and now? I don't know, but it's going to be an interesting play out.
So probably the next guy, and the guy that's been in a lot of people's conversations because of one of those platoon positions you brought up, is Justin Crawford. Precarious situation the Phillies find themselves in, because I think they don't want to not have him play every day. They also don't want to overexpose him. I asked Jake Starr from the Reading Fighting Phils on Friday. He seems to think yes. Curious your thoughts. In your opinion, is Justin Crawford ready to be a major league player?
Well, what's the drawback against him? He's a singles hitter, hits the ball on the ground an awful lot. And does that translate to something? Now, look, it's funny. You're growing up, we were always told, hit the ball in half, look to get it on the ground, don't look, not uppercutting, all that stuff, always cutting the ball in half. And that's what I read a story a couple of weeks ago. That's kind of what he was taught. And with his speed, get the ball on the ground and good things will happen. I don't know. Does that translate to Major League Baseball when you're seeing so much better pitching than AAA? Are you able to hit the ball on the ground and get the results that he's getting out of AAA? And again, what's the identity of this team? A single sitter you bring up to play center field? Okay. Guy can steal some bases. Okay. Don't you kind of have two of those guys that are platooning in center field right now, even though they're a little bit older? I don't know. I don't know what to do in that case. And like I said, it's going to be really interesting to me. Like, would that make you feel more comfortable if Crawford comes up here and starts playing? Or does it make you feel like desperation has set in?
No, I don't think it's desperation, because it's not like it's a position that, like, if you were looking at a position, say shortstop, for example, where you signed Trea Turner to a bazillion-year contract and he was offensively underperforming, you go, oh boy, how do we get out? Like, how do we get out of this thing? How do we make this contract work? And then on top of it, how do we replace it? I'm looking at two positions in left and center where nobody's really taken the reins. Nobody's really grabbed the bull by the horns and like grabbed the starting position. It should have been Max Kepler in left. You paid him $10 million to be that guy. Either one of the guys, like, you know me, I'm not the biggest Brandon Marsh fan in the world, but if either one of those guys stepped up and said, I'm going to be the guy, would have been amazing. I would love for Brandon Marsh to be a 6-day-a-week player, because he showed you he can hit lefties and has enough pop against righties to be effective. I would love for that to be the case, even though I'm not a fan of him. I don't think anybody's done that. So with that being said, I don't think it's desperation. I think it's trying something and seeing if it works. My only thing with that is, in Crawford's case specifically, I think I've been saying this for a while. I think if he comes up, he's got to play close to every day.
Yeah. You don't get better sitting on the bench.
Right.
And I'm not big into watching guys see what a major league clubhouse is like and all that stuff. No, it comes down to the 9 innings and the, 250, 300 pitches that you're going to see a game. That's what it kind of comes down to. I don't, listen to what we're talking about, the bats and the play of Marsh and Rojas. It's funny you said that, and I agree with you. One of them I wish to God, but then I thought I wouldn't. Look, they're both pretty decent fielders. Rojas exceptional, Marsh better in left than center, but still I would say above average in center field. Okay, you platoon those two guys, would be okay if the other name you mentioned, Max Kepler, was doing maybe what he was thought to do this year. And he's not either. So then that makes the center field position look even worse. And, it's kind of this recyclable ball that if you fix that, does that happen? And are they better when Harper gets in the lineup simply because they know where they're hitting and they feel more comfortable and this and that and the other? And I don't know. I don't know. It goes back to what I said a few weeks ago, Ty, and that's identity. And I just really don't have a grasp of what their offense is right now.
It's a fair question. It's a fair question to ask. So you've been doing a lot of series previews, a lot of series recaps. So let's turn our attention to the Cubs for a little bit, because, Bob, it doesn't get any easier from here. I mean, this is a really good Cubs team who their identity is they are going to like slug you into submission. They have 5 guys with OPSs over 870 to start the year, which the Phillies have 1, and it's Kyle Schwarber. They are an offensive juggernaut. They've fallen under the 6 runs per game average that they were on pace for a while, but they still score a ton of runs. And then their bullpen's actually been a lot better. It's a bunch of like cast-offs and veterans and guys that have been around for multiple cups of coffee, but it's a team that's playing really well for Craig Counsell right now. I think the Phillies have a good pitching set in front of them, with Wheeler coming back and Abel and Luzardo trying to bounce back. But I'm curious your thoughts on this series coming up, because to me, it doesn't feel like this would be a really nice spot to get the Rockies.
Yeah, you're right. You're right on that. But that's not baseball. I mean, this is what it is. You lose 9 out of 10. You just had a 6-game road trip. You come home and you have to face the Cubs, a really, really good hitting team. Okay, Zach Wheeler's on many days rest after taking the paternity leave. He's going to come out tonight. We'll see fastballs in the first inning that are probably going to hit 100, because he's going to be so amped up and ready to rock and roll. Carry that through. Like, I look tonight as a really big game. I really do. Like, you have your ace going. You haven't been able to score. You're playing a really good hitting team. All right, Wheeler, it's all on your shoulders. Here it is. You guys got to start hitting and all that. But it starts with me. It starts with Zach Wheeler. Keep this a really good hitting Cubs team down and get the offense started back at home where you need to be. And if that happens tonight, you kind of are hopeful. Abel's been terrific. Anytime you talk to me about another team that's hitting the ball really well, I'll counter with the Phillies starting pitching. Now, sure. Luzardo, as we all know, he's pitched more innings this year than he did all of last year already. So is he starting to fall on a little dead arm time? It looks like it. But it starts with me tonight with Wheeler. You got to get this win tonight. It starts with Zach Wheeler. Offense obviously has to come around. You laid out the numbers, how piss poor they are as far as scoring runs. But it starts with Wheeler tonight. You get a good outing from him, score a few runs, and get a win. Then maybe this thing can start to turn around a little bit, and maybe you get another really great outing from Abel.
Bob, you are the absolute best as always. Thank you for joining us. What's on the docket for allphly.com coming up?
Yeah, so we'll do some previews, some reviews, all of those things. I might take a deeper look into some of the struggles that are going on with individuals and try to figure out like why, where, how come. I mean, you have all the splits numbers. You are Mr. Number guy. So nothing's going to surprise you, but maybe a little deeper dive into why things might be going the way they are so badly.
Bob, you're the best. Again, check out Bob's work on allphly.com. And Bob, I'm very much looking forward to seeing you this weekend. I know our weather might not be great on Saturday, but either way.
Oh, is that right?
I saw some scattered thunderstorms, so maybe we might be playing in some rain. But I'm looking forward to seeing you. If
you probably have a place under cover where you can grab a soda,
an adult beverage or two.
Yeah, maybe.
I heard they have a word for that. It's called the bar.
Yeah,
just found that out today, actually.
The bar's open.
Never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Bob, I'm very much looking forward to
buddy.
seeing you on Saturday. Thanks so much for joining us.
You got
as
it,
always,
buddy.
on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
I'll see you.
There he is, Bob Cooney. Again, you can catch his work on allphly.com. You can follow Bob on Twitter. Bob's been active on Twitter. He's always active on Twitter, but we'll drop all of his PHLY articles and things like that. And I'm looking forward to seeing Bob. Yes, our PHLY golf outing, our second annual golf outing, is Saturday. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we are officially closed in terms of selling things. Andrew gives me the thumbs up. So I believe we are officially closed. So thank you to everybody who's going to join us. I'm really excited to see you. We'll be there on Saturday at Valley Brook Country Club, 2:00. I'm going to make a fool of myself. You can, if we've never met before, you can meet me. You can meet my father, who's going to play with me on Saturday. And you can meet all the incredible PHLY staff who's going to be there as well. All right, let's pause for just a moment. One final ad break before we wrap things up today. We're going to end with some fun. I told you, I promise we'll end with some fun. But let's pause for just a second and tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. All right, let's start with the Game Time app, because the Game Time app is the best ticketing app in all of the secondary markets to get the quickest, the most efficient, the most affordable, and the best seats available, especially when you're looking for last-minute deals. Whether it is a sporting event, a concert, a comedy event, whatever the case may be, you can buy all of your tickets 100% authenticated. You're not going to have to worry about any kind of issues when you buy your tickets via the Game Time app. And fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay, and that is something that I think is underappreciated nowadays. You get hit with those hidden fees at the very end. You go, whoa, where did this come from? No. One slide of a toggle switch, and Game Time is going to show you exactly how much you are going to pay for your specific tickets. So not only that, but you can also use the 3D feature. I've told you about the 3D feature for years, whether you're hitting the road for a game for your hometown ball club, or you're going to a concert out of town or a comedy event or whatever it might be. Maybe you're on vacation and you saw a show you didn't expect pop up and you want to go. Use the Game Time app to see exactly where you're going to sit and where your seats are going to be. And of course, you can get last-minute tickets and zone deals. And the best part about Game Time, perhaps, is that tickets actually go down as the event gets closer and closer. So you can get in on all-in pricing, seat views, zone deals, and of course, the lowest price guarantee. You can do that all with the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, download the app. Use the code PHLY, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Empire Today. You want to talk about guarantees? The guarantee with Empire Today is you're going to get professional expertise done, work and help in your flooring process. Whether you're thinking about getting hardwood, tile, carpeting, whatever the is going in your home, you want the experts, and that is exactly what Empire does, because that is what they do. They are the flooring experts. They're dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring each and every day. Listen, we've all been to the big box stores where you wander the aisles, somebody comes to help you, but they're from a different section, or they're filling in for somebody who's sick, and they may not have all the answers. And then you end up hauling all of the material home by yourself. Sometimes it's overwhelming, and you just want the professionals that are going to walk you through each and every step of the process. And that's where Empire comes in. They're going to help you pick out the right flooring and the right colors for your space. They'll help you see how it looks with your furniture in your house, in your setting. They're going to take precise measurements, and you'll have all of your questions expertly answered, so there are no surprises. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive $350 discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Once again, that's a $350 discount with the code PHLY. Restrictions do apply. Visit Empire today/PHLY for full details. All right, one final segment here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. I told you we'll have some fun at the end of this. So 4th of July is still a little bit more than a month away, but MLB has dropped its 4th of July hats, and they are gorgeous. I know they're all in the same color scheme. They're either the red brim or the blue brim with the baby blue cap portion, and then, the American flag in the cutout of the team's logo. Some of these hats are absolutely beautiful. There are a couple that stand out to me. Now, there's a couple that fit the bill, because I think about the Royals, it's kind of similar color schemes. It's not a very long transition from their normal hat to the 4th of July hats. But there's a couple of hats that stand out to me. First and foremost, I think the Chicago Cubs hat is gorgeous. Same could be said for the Texas Rangers right next to it. I should have cropped these out and made them bigger, bigger images. Some of these hats are really, really nice. There's a couple that are kind of weird. I mean, and I'm going to say this. I understand why the Blue Jays have a different look than the rest of them. It's a Canadian team. It's got the Canadian flag as opposed to the American flag. But the all red in that hat specifically, I'm not sure works as well as the Stars and Stripes do in this particular setting. Some of these hats are really, really nice. Now, I will say this. The only thing that I don't like about these hats, and yes, I do believe they do come in the dad hat style as well, peeling onions. The only thing I don't like about these hats, and Ray Schumacher brings it up in the chat, I can't stand this new trend of the rope piece around the brim of the hat. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I dislike it as much as I do. I just am not a fan of it for whatever reason. But I think these hats in totality are amazing. Now, with 90 seconds left, and I'm sorry to do this to you, Andrew, but I want to get your thoughts on these hats because I haven't had a chance to talk to you today. As I know he's about to give me crap because I see the hat that he's wearing. Andrew Frazier, what's up, my friend? Your thoughts on these
You don't
hats?
like the rope.
I don't like the rope around.
You don't like the rope?
I know you do. I know it's your style.
Yeah.
But your thoughts on these hats? I think they're beautiful.
No, I like them. I think I know how the brim color is different for each team. I would have liked AL being one color, NL being another.
Sure.
I think that would have been pretty cool. But overall, they're pretty sweet.
Yeah,
I
like
the Phillies hat.
I like these hats. We've had some bad. I shouldn't say gimmick hats. I should say we've had some bad, celebratory different style hats and things like that. Do you remember the Texas Rangers one from last year that got them into some hot water?
Yes.
It had the big T right in the middle, and then Texas was it got them into some hot water.
Yeah.
I think the A's hat spelled out ass at one point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's been some bad hats
ones
around. And by the way, big thank you to everybody who joined us on on all of our streaming platforms. If you want to watch the rest of the show, head on over to allphly.com. So thank you to everybody on Samsung, Roku, all of our streaming platforms. It is time for our overtime period here on PHLY. All right, not much more to talk about. I hear my wife and my baby hanging out. They're playing and having a good time. He's laughing out there, so I'm gonna go hang out with them.
Sounds like fun.
And we'll wrap this thing up with I just wanted to do something fun at the end of the show because it was. Listen, Andrew, just really quickly, your thoughts. this was an annoying week, an annoying 10 games of baseball. So I wanted to end with something fun, but your thoughts on the last couple of series?
It's heartbreaking. You want something to turn around, but it's just not happening. And, watching Stott, watching Bohm, watching, Marsh, this outfield problem, the hitting. I don't know. Collectively, like you said earlier, and we were talking about it on Anthony's show this morning as well, it really does feel like when this team slumps, they all do it together. And there's a part of me, the optimist in me, is saying, hey, still a lot of baseball left. Things can turn around. Things can change. This team can find their heat. They can start hitting. They can start making moves. One thing I would like to say is, before going all crazy with the trade deadline coming up and trying to find a piece, find something in-house first, because I don't want to lose somebody or trade something off that is
Justin Crawford.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to, potentially hurt us down the road. So, try Crawford. Let's see how Kemp does. There's a couple other guys that you can move some guys around. Maybe try Bryce out in the outfield. Try Turner in the outfield. Try some things. I feel like right now this is the time to experiment. Especially before that trade deadline. Exhaust every option possible before we make a big decision. What's going to hurt? We're already kind of slumping anyway. So, maybe something sticks. Maybe we find something we didn't know. So that's my 2 cents.
Phils and Cubs tonight. Cubs have won 17 of their last 24 games. They've also won 9 of their last 13 series. And again, as I talked with Bob, they are a team that can absolutely outslug you. But their bullpen's been really good as well. Phillies tonight, Zach Wheeler versus Matthew Boyd. Boyd's been really good. 3.01 ERA over the season. And once he started limiting the walks, he's been really, really good. This should be a fun one today. Just quickly before we wrap up, Phils win this series?
It's hard to say yes. Let's start with tonight. Let's see how tonight goes. If they can win today, maybe.
All right. We'll talk again on Wednesday. Andrew, thank you so much for being here with us today, for producing and joining us here at the end. Big thank you to Bob Cooney for joining the show, as always, on each and every Monday. And, of course, a big thank you to everybody in the chat. I'm going to give you a quick shout-out real quick. Ray Schumacher, Peel and Onions, K-Red, Player One in the Mad Cats, Futz, AC Phila, scrolling. Who else do we have? Nick Olmo. Thank you. Filthy McNasty. Anybody else that I missed, I apologize. Thank you for joining us. Heart Dog was here earlier. Everyday Mets. Our Mets fan is in the chat once again. What's up? Everybody, thank you so much. If I missed you, I apologize. A big thank you to you for joining the show. Again, big thank you to Andrew for producing and for Bob Cooney for joining us at 1:30. We'll be back on Wednesday for 1 o'clock show. Wednesday and Friday live. And then the Phillies play at 1 on Thursday. So we'll have to see what we're going to do. We may end up with another live pregame show on Thursday at like 12:30. But thank you to everybody in the chat. We'll be back with you on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Switch on over to the PHLY Eagles podcast, which is live now. PHLY Sixers at 3. And we'll talk to you again at 1 o'clock. Phils and Cubs tonight, 6:45. Zach Wheeler and Matthew Boyd. And we'll see you on Wednesday. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.